The night hums with quiet energy. Somewhere between dream and memory, a thin thread of light flickers. The echo of a man who once tried to capture lightning in his hands. His name was Nikola Tesla, a visionary who spoke to storms, dreamed of invisible currents, and wandered through life haunted by the brilliance of his own mind. Tonight, as the world outside slows to a whisper, we travel back through time, into the mind of a genius the world forgot to understand. If these words carry you closer to sleep, let this channel stay by your side too, a quiet place where history speaks softly, and the past breathes through the stillness of night. The night Tesla was born, lightning danced across the dark sky, like a living spirit. The air trembled, alive with sound, a storm that seemed to awaken the earth itself. His mother labored through the thunder, each flash of light painting the walls in fleeting gold. When the midwife flinched at a bolt that struck nearby, she whispered that a child born in such a storm would either bring darkness or light to the world. Tesla's mother, calm even through pain, smiled faintly and said, "He will bring light." In that small village of Smiljan, in what was in the Austrian Empire, the world moved slowly, a rhythm of candlelight, wooden wheels, and quiet prayers. The Tesla home stood between two worlds, the sacred and the scientific, the spiritual and the electric. His father, Maludin, a priest and poet, believed words were divine tools, that language could shape the soul. His mother, Juka, crafted inventions in her hands, simple but ingenious, spinning wheels, looms, tools of her own design. From her, Nikola inherited the rhythm of creation. From his father, the weight of introspection. Even as a child, he was strange in ways that others could not understand. He saw flashes of light when he thought deeply, shapes that formed from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. To him, ideas were not abstract things, they were living visions, burning behind his eyes. He spoke of currents before he knew what they were, of invisible forces that connected all things. When he told his family he could feel the pulse of the world, they smiled, half in wonder, half in worry. The villagers whispered about the boy with the lightning dreams. Some said he was blessed, others said cursed. But Tesla paid no mind to whispers. He was too busy listening. To the hum of bees, to the murmur of rivers, to the trembling silence that followed every storm. He believed that nature spoke in patterns, that every sound and shadow carried meaning. And sometimes, as night fell and rain drummed softly against the roof, he would imagine the thunder answering him back. In school, he was brilliant and distracted in equal measure. Numbers and symbols came to him effortlessly, as if he had already known them before birth. But he often drifted into reverie, his teachers catching him staring out the window, lost in invisible machines and currents no one else could see. He once confessed to a friend that he could build entire inventions in his mind and test them there, part by part, until they worked perfectly, all without touching a single tool. The world around him was still bound to old ways, steam, candlelight, and superstition. Yet deep inside the boy, something modern had already awakened. He dreamed of power drawn from the earth itself, of a future where wires and boundaries dissolved, and energy moved freely, like the wind or water. He was a century ahead, trapped in a world that hadn't caught up. His mother understood the ache in his spirit. She would sit beside him by lamplight, hands busy with thread, and listen as he spoke of lightning as if it were a friend. "You were born with it," she would say softly. "Maybe the storm chose you." And in that moment, even the restless hum inside him would quiet, for only she could make the thunder inside his heart fall silent for a while. But the peace never lasted long. Tesla's life was marked by visions, not just of science, but of loss. When his brother Dane died suddenly in an accident, Nikola was just 7. The grief split his world apart. Dane had been bright, beloved, and graceful, the pride of the family. Nikola, fragile and feverish with guilt, retreated inward. He began to see his brother in dreams, glowing like the lightning that had once filled their skies. From that moment on, death and genius walked beside him, intertwined. He grew quiet, more withdrawn. Teachers found him brilliant yet distant, polite but unreachable. He moved like someone carrying invisible weight, the burden of a mind that could not rest, and a heart that could not forget. Nights became his solace. When others slept, he would wander outside to watch storms form over the hills, tracing the electric veins that flashed across the sky. In those moments, he wasn't a boy anymore. He was something else, a listener of the earth, a seeker of the current that hummed through creation itself. And so, as his childhood slipped quietly towards end, Tesla's identity began to form. Part dreamer, part scientist, part ghost of the storm that had brought him into the world. Every night seemed to whisper a secret only he could hear. That light was not just fire, but a language. That the universe itself could be made to sing. And as the storms rolled away into the distance, the boy who spoke to thunder stood on the edge of a world not yet ready for his voice. As Tesla grew older, the world around him began to expand, but never fast enough to match the speed of his imagination. In the small classrooms of Croatia, his mind roamed beyond the textbooks, beyond the narrow windows that looked out over dusty roads and quiet fields. The teacher soon realized that his hunger for knowledge was both a gift and a burden. He devoured every subject. Physics, poetry, languages, not out of duty, but out of an unshakable curiosity that left him sleepless. When lessons ended, he would linger behind, scribbling strange diagrams in the margins of his notebooks, wheels within wheels, circles intersecting, lines of force invisible yet alive. He spoke softly about ideas that startled even his mentors, machines that move without touch, energy drawn from the very air, light traveling without flame. To many, it sounded like fantasy. To Tesla, it was memory, something he already knew but had not yet proven. His fascination with electricity grew from wonder into obsession. When he first saw a demonstration of static electricity, a spark leaping between two metal rods, he felt a shock deeper than the physical. That tiny flash seemed to confirm everything he had always sensed. Power could move without visible connection. The world, he thought, was woven with unseen currents, waiting for someone to listen. Nights became his laboratory. He scavenged bits of wire, broken tools, and candle wax, fashioning crude experiments by lamplight. Once, he even attempted to harness lightning by creating small spinning coils from old copper and wood. The sparks frightened his family, yet he watched them with calm fascination, whispering, "It's alive." His mother, patient and loving, would only shake her head, smile faintly, and tell him not to burn the house down. But Tesla's mind did not burn. It glowed, steady and controlled, like a lantern in the fog. He soon realized that his thoughts were not random visions, but precise mechanisms. Every invention came to him fully formed in the theater of his mind. He could spin it there, examine each gear and wire, test it, repair it, and watch it come to life, all before a single piece existed in his hands. "I build my machines in my imagination," he would later say, "and they work." Yet genius can be a lonely inheritance. His classmates admired him but kept their distance. He spoke too fast, thought too deep, drifted too far. There were days when he wandered through fields, talking softly to himself, describing the shapes of unseen forces. To the villagers, he seemed touched by something otherworldly. To himself, he was simply listening to the patterns of existence. Then came illness, the first of many shadows that would chase him throughout his life. He fell into fever, hallucinating lights, sounds, and voices that merged with his thoughts. For weeks, he hovered between life and death. In those delirious nights, he claimed to see vast wheels turning in the heavens, flashes of brilliance forming words he could not yet understand. When he recovered, weak but alive, something had changed. His vision of the world was clearer, sharper, as if he had glimpsed the code of creation itself. Tesla's father, relieved but cautious, wanted him to follow the family path, to become a priest. But Nikola had no interest in sermons or rituals. His faith was in nature's laws, in the quiet truth of discovery. The more his father insisted, the more the young man's resolve deepened. "If I must serve," he once said softly, "let it be the light." A compromise came through tragedy. When a second wave of illness struck, nearly taking his life again, his father, desperate and fearful, promised that if Nikola survived, he could study engineering instead of theology. It was a promise made in panic, but it saved the future. Tesla recovered, his strength returning like a rekindled flame, and with it came a purpose as fierce as any storm. He left his village behind, walking the narrow roads that wound through fields and forests, feeling as if he were crossing the boundary between dream and destiny. Each step carried him farther from home and closer to the heart of a world trembling on the edge of a new age, the age of electricity. In those journeys, he often traveled by night. The stars became his quiet companions, and he would watch the sky, whispering equations under his breath. He believed that everything, light, sound, thought, was vibration, a great harmony that bound all living things. He could almost hear it, like distant music carried on the wind. He studied in Graz and in Prague, where the walls of the universities were lined with the echoes of thinkers and scientists. There, among endless lectures and experiments, Tesla found both wonder and disappointment. He was brilliant but restless. The professors spoke of known laws, fixed principles, and boundaries that could not be crossed. Tesla, quietly, began to doubt them all. He spent nights alone, tracing invisible patterns in the air, imagining machines that rotated on magnetic fields, silent engines that would draw energy not from fire, but from force itself. His mind refused to rest. He slept little, ate less, and spoke to few. He was not chasing success. He was chasing truth, something vast and wordless that glimmered just beyond the reach of comprehension. And though he did not know it yet, every sleepless night, every spark of inspiration, every lonely walk beneath the stars was leading him toward a moment that would change the world. The birth of a new current, a revolution of energy, and a destiny bound in both brilliance and sorrow. And so, as the young Tesla closed another long day with tired eyes and trembling hands, the hum of the universe still surrounded him. The boy who once spoke to thunder was growing into a man who would soon command it. The years passed quietly, but inside Tesla's mind, storms continued to rage. He walked the cobbled streets of Graz with distant, dreamlike gaze, often oblivious to the world around him. His professors called him brilliant, but unanchored, a mind too wide for the structure of study. He could absorb a book in a single night, memorizing every word, every diagram. Yet he found little joy in repetition. The known world of science felt too small, too limited for what he imagined in silence. It was during one of these restless lectures that the idea came, not like a flash, but like a slow, dawning light. The professor had been demonstrating a primitive machine that ran on direct current, its sparks erratic and uneven. Tesla sat still, his dark eyes fixed on the spinning metal. The machine vibrated, hummed, and stopped, bound by inefficiency. His mind whispered, there must be a smoother way, a current that breathes, that turns itself. He left the classroom in a trance, wandering through the streets as rain began to fall. The sky above Graz had dimmed to silver, and thunder rolled softly across the hills. As he walked, something within him aligned, not emotion, not vision, but pure understanding. He saw it clearly in his mind, a magnetic field that rotated on its own, powered by alternating current, flowing in waves instead of lines. The thought filled him with awe. He stopped under a tree, soaked to the bone, and whispered to himself, the sun, the stars, the universe itself, they all rotate. Why not electricity? That night, he did not sleep. He drew circles and spirals on scrap paper, each line a step closer to the revelation that would one day transform the modern world. But no one around him could see what he saw. To others, he was just another student with strange habits, pacing through corridors at midnight, muttering equations into the dark. To him, he was standing at the edge of discovery, yet genius came at a cost. His body, fragile from years of hunger and sleeplessness, began to fail him. His nerves trembled with exhaustion. His heart fluttered with anxiety. He felt the pressure of ideas building like thunderclouds that would not release. Sometimes he would collapse into bed, his mind still spinning, and dream of circles of light turning endlessly in space. He awoke feeling both inspired and cursed, as though creation itself demanded too much of him. He stopped attending classes for days at a time. His professors grew impatient. Some called him delusional. One even accused him of chasing phantoms of physics. But Tesla's conviction did not waver. He believed that electricity was alive, that it flowed not merely through wires but through the air, through the very essence of the world. To him, the invisible was real, and he was its translator. During these years, he began to develop an almost spiritual relationship with light. Candles, lamps, lightning. They were symbols of something divine, something eternal. He would sit alone, staring into a flickering flame, whispering thoughts aloud, as if speaking to an unseen companion. He wrote that light was the breath of the universe, and one day, humanity would learn to control it as gently as holding a candle. But life, as it often does with dreamers, turned cruel. The financial strain of his studies grew unbearable. Letters from home carried worry, not comfort. His father's health was failing, and Nikola's own health faltered under the weight of obsession. He lived in small rooms, barely affording food, surviving on little more than bread and thought. His classmates laughed at his refusal to rest, calling him the machine that never stops. And yet, when others saw madness, Tesla saw clarity. He could visualize not only the machines of his imagination, but the movement of entire systems. Power stations, cities illuminated without fire, the flow of energy across continents. He felt as though he were glimpsing the blueprint of the future. Still, the world did not yet have space for such a vision. The age of innovation was dawning, but its heart was still rooted in the tangible gears, steam, and the smell of oil. Tesla's alternating current was too abstract, too ethereal. He lacked the resources to build it, the platform to share it, the trust of those who could help. And so his great discovery, the rotating magnetic field, remained trapped in his mind, a bright prisoner in a dark cage. When his father died unexpectedly, Tesla was left adrift. The grief struck hard, but beneath it lay a fierce new determination. He had made a promise to live in pursuit of light, to uncover the hidden forces that connected everything. He left the university behind, walking away from degrees and recognition, carrying only his notebooks and the fragile dream that had haunted him since childhood. As he wandered across Europe, from Budapest to Paris, the rhythm of invention followed him like a ghost. He worked wherever he could, as a draftsman and assistant, a mechanic. Yet always, in the quiet moments, he returned to that same invisible machine spinning inside his head. And sometimes, late at night, when the air grew still and stars hummed above him, he would close his eyes and whisper to the storm he had once called friend, "I will find you again, the light that moves without flame." And so, with little more than a vision and an unyielding heart, Tesla began his slow journey toward a new world, a world that would both celebrate and destroy him. The ship that carried Nikola Tesla across the Atlantic moved slowly through restless waves, its decks alive with the scent of salt and coal. The air was thick with anticipation, hundreds of dreams drifting toward the promise of America, but none burned brighter or lonelier than his. Tesla stood often at the railing, watching the ocean darken beneath the evening sky. Each flash of lightning in the far distance felt like a quiet greeting, a familiar voice reminding him that his purpose had not been forgotten. He had little with him, a few coins, a bundle of papers, and the unbuilt vision of a world powered by invisible waves. Europe had exhausted him. Its investors had doubted him. Its scientists had dismissed him, and its streets had offered him nothing but hunger. But America was said to be different. It was a land that loved invention, that welcomed impossible ideas and the men who carried them. Or so he hoped. When the ship docked in New York Harbor in 1884, the city was already alive with electric light. Thin strands of Edison's brilliance stretched across the skyline like veins of fire. The streets glowed dimly under bulbs that buzzed faintly, feeding on direct current. Tesla stared at them with quiet admiration, but also with doubt. He could already see the inefficiency, the limits, the flaws, the waste. Yet in those lights, he also saw opportunity. New York was a machine of endless noise. Carriages clattered, vendors shouted, steam hissed from the ground. Tesla walked its streets like a man from another world, tall and solemn, his dark coat worn from travel, his eyes alight with silent calculation. He found work quickly at the Edison Company, through a letter of recommendation from a European colleague. It was said that Edison himself admired practical men, but Tesla was anything but ordinary. Their first meeting would become legend. Edison, rough-handed and confident, met Tesla, refined and soft-spoken. Two men separated not only by temperament but by philosophy. Edison believed in trial and error, in persistence through thousands of small failures. Tesla believed in the perfection of vision, that a machine should exist flawlessly in the mind before it was ever built. When Edison spoke, he spoke in sparks. When Tesla spoke, He spoke in light. At first, the collaboration was respectful. Edison saw in Tesla a mind of rare precision. Tesla, in turn, admired Edison's tenacity. He worked tirelessly, repairing dynamos, improving motors, solving problems others couldn't even name. He often labored the night, his long fingers stained with oil and copper dust, his thoughts racing faster than his hands. Edison's factory hummed like a living organism, and Tesla became its quiet heart. Yet soon, differences began to show. Tesla proposed to Edison an entirely new system, alternating current, one that could carry power across vast distances without losing strength. Edison laughed, dismissing the idea as dangerous fantasy. Alternating current, he said, is useless. Stay with direct current. It's safe, it's mine, it works. But Tesla had seen farther. He knew that the world Edison built was small, bound by limits. AC, he believed, could free humanity from the chains of proximity. Power without borders, light for every home. Their relationship began to fracture. The story of their dispute has been told many times. The promise of reward that never came, the misunderstanding or deceit, depending on who you ask. Edison had offered a sum, $50,000, for a complete redesign of his DC generators. Tesla delivered, but when he asked for payment, Edison laughed. Tesla, he said, you don't understand our American humor. It was no humor to Tesla. He left the company that same day, dignity intact, but pockets empty. The streets that had once seemed alive with promise now loomed cold and indifferent. For months, he wandered without work, taking small jobs, digging ditches, wiring buildings, anything to survive. It was during this time that his resolve hardened. He had lost everything before. Now he had only his dream left to lose. At night, beneath the glow of lamps powered by the very system he had tried to replace, Tesla would stand in the shadows and look upward. The hum of the city felt heavy, constrained, almost mechanical. He longed for silence, the kind of silence that exists just before lightning strikes. That, he thought, is where true power sleeps. He began again, this time with help from investors who saw in him something extraordinary. Not a laborer, but a visionary. They gave him a small workshop, a handful of tools, and the freedom to chase his impossible current. And so, in a modest laboratory on South Fifth Avenue, Nikola Tesla began building the future. The first time he saw his alternating current motor turn, silent, smooth, perfect, he stood motionless. The device spun as if alive, obeying invisible rhythm, powered not by friction but by harmony. It was a realization of everything he had imagined beneath the storms of his childhood. The boy who spoke to thunder had finally found its voice. He knew, standing there in the soft hum of his creation, that nothing would ever be the same again. But he also knew something else, that every discovery comes with price. For every spark of brilliance, there will be darkness waiting in return. And as he switched off the motor, the silence that followed felt almost holy. In the dim corridors of history, there are few rivalries as electric, as painfully human, as that between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. Both men sought to illuminate the world, but their visions glowed with very different light. Edison was the master of persistence, practical, business-minded, and fiercely territorial. He believed that light should serve industry, not imagination. Tesla, on the other hand, was a dreamer, a man who believed that energy was not a product to be sold, but a gift to be shared freely with all humanity. When Tesla joined Edison's company in New York, he arrived with quiet reverence. He admired Edison's inventions, his drive, his success. But soon, admiration turned to disillusionment. Tesla was asked to redesign Edison's inefficient motors, a task he completed with elegance and brilliance. Yet, when the time came for reward, Edison laughed and dismissed him, saying, "You don't understand our American humor." That single moment cut deep into Tesla's heart. It wasn't about money. It was about respect, a recognition of the beauty in his vision. The seed of rivalry was sown that day, watered by pride and nourished by betrayal. Tesla left Edison's lab with nothing but his notebooks and a fragile hope. He walked the cold streets of New York, hungry, exhausted, and nearly invisible. Yet, inside his mind, worlds of light were still spinning. He dreamed of alternating current, a current that pulsed back and forth like the rhythm of the earth itself, a current that could travel vast distances without losing strength, unlike Edison's direct current, which flickered and faded after a few blocks. And then destiny intervened. George Westinghouse, a man of industry but also of imagination, saw what Tesla saw, the future. He offered Tesla a partnership respect and something Edison never gave, belief. Together, they began the revolution that would electrify the planet. But revolutions are rarely gentle. Edison fought back with a vengeance. He launched a public war against Tesla's system, calling it dangerous, deadly, even demonstrating electrocutions of animals to prove his point. It was brutal, theatrical, and beneath the dignity of science. Yet Tesla stayed silent, believing that truth, like light, needed no defense. It simply had to shine. Soon, the world witnessed that light. At the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, Tesla's alternating current powered the entire event, a symphony of illumination that painted the night in silver fire. For the first time, the darkness of humanity's ignorance trembled before the brilliance of his design. People gasped. The world changed. And yet, deep within Tesla's heart, the victory felt strangely hollow. He had given the world a miracle, but the world still did not understand him. As the applause faded, he looked up at the glowing sky and whispered softly, "The present is theirs, the future, for which I have truly worked, is mine." And so, as the night deepened, his journey moved quietly forward into greater dreams, greater loneliness, and the haunting pursuit of limitless energy. In the quiet solitude of Long Island, Nikola Tesla walked along the shoreline before dawn, his coat brushing the damp sand, his thoughts spinning like the wheels of machines that lived in his imagination. The world around him was still wrapped in darkness, but inside his mind, a luminous current pulsed, steady, insistent, eternal. The ocean whispered beneath the faint glow of the horizon, carrying a rhythm that seemed to echo the secret patterns he had always believed existed between all things: air, earth, light, and electricity. Tesla had dreamed of this moment for years. He had crossed continents, survived betrayal, and faced failure. Yet here he was on a plot of land where the waves kissed the shore, ready to bring into the world a vision so vast, so impossibly grand, that few could even imagine it. Wardenclyffe, his tower, would not merely transmit electricity. It would reach into the sky itself, drawing energy from the air and deliver it freely to humanity. To Tesla, this was not ambition. It was inevitability. The universe had always communicated through currents, through flashes, through vibration, and now, finally, he would listen with hands and heart wide open. The tower began to rise slowly, as all great things do, inch by inch, bolt by bolt. Its steel skeleton caught the first light of dawn, standing taller than the trees, casting long shadows across the sand. Workers whispered about its strange beauty, how the structure seemed alive, almost breathing, as though it were connected to the world in ways that the eye could not see. Tesla hardly noticed their awe. His attention was elsewhere, attuned to the invisible, the energy vibrating faintly in the air, as the earth itself were preparing to speak. He worked tirelessly. Morning merged into evening and evening into night, each hour a thread woven into the tapestry of his dream. Tesla's hands, long and precise, moved with the rhythm of thought, winding coils, adjusting wires, aligning magnets with meticulous care that spoke of devotion more than science. His mind orchestrated every detail. Every movement of his hands, every alignment of metal and copper had already been perfected in his imagination. He had always believed that a machine must exist fully formed in the mind before it could manifest in the world. Yet the world around him was less patient than he. Investors, initially captivated by the promise of a revolutionary tower, began to question the cost, the scale, the feasibility. Letters arrived with polite caution and sometimes thinly veiled skepticism. "We believe in your vision," they wrote, "but are unsure the public is ready for such grandeur." Tesla read each note with quiet detachment, a calm smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He had lived his life waiting for understanding, not permission. The universe did not consult committees. Why should he? Still, the shadow of doubt settled on the tower like a slow fog. Tesla's mind, always ablaze, began to feel the pull of exhaustion. He would rise before dawn, skipping meals, pacing for hours, whispering plans aloud, spinning theories in the air as though speaking to invisible collaborators. The lines between vision and reality blurred. Sometimes the coils seemed to hum with approval, and the winds through the trees carried faint whispers of encouragement. Nights became both laboratory and sanctuary. He slept little, dreaming of currents pulsing invisibly through the world, each one a note in a cosmic symphony that only he could hear. Neighbors noticed him walking alone in the darkness, hands clasped behind his back, murmuring to himself. To the ordinary eye, he seemed lost, consumed by obsession. But Tesla was listening, not to voices of men, but to the language of nature, the subtle vibrations of electricity, the soft resonance of a universe waiting to be awakened. He believed that one day, light would travel not only along wires, but invisibly, freely, to every corner of the earth. He imagined a night illuminated without candles, without fuel, without expense, a night where humanity could walk freely under stars and electric glow alike, connected to the pulse of the planet itself. The work on the tower was painstaking. Every coil, every insulator, every magnet had to be perfect, aligned not only physically but metaphysically, according to the rhythm of forces that Tesla alone could perceive. He labored with patience that few could fathom, days stretching into nights without pause. The wind off the water tugged at the metal framework, the cold bit at his hands, yet he barely noticed. He was guided by an inner current stronger than fatigue, a quiet certainty that the vision he nurtured was not only possible but destined. Yet with every step forward, challenges multiplied. Financial support began to waver. Some investors feared scandal, failure, or loss. Engineers, skilled but conventional, grew frustrated with Tesla's insistence on purity of design. The plan is too vast, too theoretical, they warned. It will never work in practice. Tesla nodded, patient and gentle, as if acknowledging children pointing out clouds in the sky. To him, practicality was secondary. Imagination, unbound, was primary. He had learned early that the path of genius is rarely understood by the many. At night, he would sit on the shoreline, looking up at the stars reflected on a restless ocean, and speak softly to the wind. It hums. It waits. One day it will answer. In those moments, the tower seemed alive, a silent giant, breathing, pulsing, stretching toward infinity. Tesla's obsession was not with fame or wealth or recognition. It was with communion, a dialogue with the energy that ran to the world, unseen but essential, eternal but waiting. And yet, even as the tower rose, the world tugged at his dream with subtle, inexorable forces. Financial instability, doubt from peers, and the practical realities of building something so unprecedented pressed upon him. Tesla felt it keenly, a shadow at the edge of every thought. But he did not waver. The storm within him, the thunder that had greeted his birth, was still alive, quiet but unyielding, pushing him forward. As the first steel beams of the tower pierced the morning sky, Tesla paused. He looked out over the water, over the sands of Long Island, and whispered almost reverently, "Soon, the world will know what I have seen. The air itself can carry light." And in that quiet, the faint hum of the universe seemed to respond. And so, as dawn broke and the waves whispered against the shore, Wardenclyffe stood, not yet complete, but alive in intention, a monument to persistence of imagination and the delicate balance between brilliance and obsession. The first months at Wardenclyffe were exhilarating and delicate, like holding a storm in the palm of your hand. Tesla poured every ounce of his being into the project. Each morning, he rose before dawn, walking along the shoreline as mist curled around his boots, listening to the faint rhythm of waves and wind, as if they whispered secrets only he could understand. By the time the sun had stretched its first golden fingers across the water, Tesla was already inside the laboratory, the air alive with copper and steel, coils and filaments humming softly beneath his touch. But the world outside did not move at the same pace as his vision. Investors, once captivated by the promise of a tower that could illuminate the planet without wires, began to hesitate. Letters arrived, polite but cautious, warning of costs, risks, and the audacity of attempting such a feat. Tesla read each one carefully, absorbing the words without anger, only a quiet sorrow. He had learned early that true vision is rarely understood at first, and that brilliance is often met with doubt. The work pressed on nevertheless. Tesla spent nights alone in the tower, moving from coil to coil, adjusting, testing, whispering calculations to the air as if speaking to the universe itself. He felt the pulse of energy in the room, the faint vibration that spoke of unseen currents flowing through the earth, waiting to be awakened. And in those moments, fatigue vanished, replaced by the quiet ecstasy of creation. The tower became not just a machine, but a living dream, a bridge between the known and the unseen. Yet isolation weighs on even the strongest mind. Tesla's health began to falter under relentless work. He ate sparingly, slept little, and spoke to few. Nights became his only sanctuary, where dreams and reality blurred, and he conversed with the currents he hoped to unleash. Occasionally, he would step outside to the shore, staring at the stars mirrored in the restless ocean, whispering, "It waits! It waits for the moment the world is ready." The solitude was heavy, but it sharpened his vision. Financial pressures mounted. Investors grew impatient. Some doubted the practicality of a tower that transmitted power invisibly, beyond the reach of their understanding. Others feared ridicule or failure, or the slow collapse of their investment. Tesla faced their skepticism with unwavering calm, but behind the serene demeanor lay the storm of worry that haunted him since childhood. Every bolt tightened, every coil wound, carried the weight of a dream, a lifetime, and a legacy he feared might vanish before it was fully realized. The tower rose slowly, silhouetted against the sky, a testament to patience and obsession. Engineers whispered among themselves, marveling at Tesla's insistence on precision and purity of design. Some called it folly, others genius. Tesla welcomed both opinions with quiet detachment. He had learned that the world often sees either brilliance or madness, rarely both in the same measure. Then came the slow, creeping failure. Investors withdrew support, distracted by other ventures, frightened by the immense costs, or simply unwilling to wait for a vision centuries ahead of its time. Tesla found himself alone in a tower that now seemed too big, too ambitious, even for him. He worked tirelessly, yet he could not conjure more money from thin air, nor could he bend the patience of men whose understanding was bound by pragmatism. Despite the mounting pressure, Tesla's mind remained alight with ideas. He envisioned a world where energy flowed invisibly, freely, without wires or boundaries. He imagined cities bathed in silent light, the hum of electricity moving through the air like music, all powered by the tower that now loomed over Long Island. He scribbled equations endlessly, testing, reimagining, perfecting, as if the world itself depended on the alignment of every coil, every wire, every magnetic field. Even in the quietest hours, doubt occasionally crept in. He could hear it in the voices of investors, in the whispers of skeptical engineers, and even in the occasional pangs of his own exhaustion. Yet he refused to give in. He had seen the future in his mind, as clearly as a star shines in the night sky, and no amount of doubt could dim it. He continued, one step, one coil, one silent spark at a time, guided by the pulse of the universe that only he could feel. Days and nights merged into an endless continuum. Tesla's health deteriorated. His body weakened under the unrelenting intensity of work and obsession. He barely noticed the world beyond the tower, walking its shorelines alone, whispering to the currents of air and earth. Yet in that solitude, he found clarity. The tower was not merely a machine. It was an extension of his mind, a vessel for the invisible forces he had spent a lifetime understanding. And then, quietly, the inevitable happened. Wardenclyffe's construction slowed. Funding dried up, and the tower, magnificent and still incomplete, became a symbol of both ambition and human limitation. Tesla watched it rise toward the sky each day, a silent sentinel of dreams that the world was not yet ready to receive. There was sorrow in the realization that the future he'd envisioned could not yet come to pass, yet he refused despair. The vision remained, undiminished, waiting for the day when humanity might finally catch up with the whisper of the currents he had always heard. Even as creditors pressed, newspapers doubted, and the city continued its noisy, indifferent pulse, Tesla walked the tower's shadow at night, whispering equations and plans into the dark, as if the stars themselves were listening. "Patience," he murmured to the wind. "The world will learn in time, it will understand." And so, Wardenclyffe stood, a monumental dream, a tower reaching toward the infinite, a delicate balance of genius and obsession, of hope and quiet despair. Tesla, the boy who had once spoken to thunder, now spoke to the universe itself. And in that conversation, he found both purpose and the bittersweet reminder that vision often comes before understanding, and light is born long before the world is ready to see it. The winds along Island had grown colder, and Wardenclyffe stood as a solemn silhouette against the fading light, a tower that seemed almost to mourn the unrealized promise within its steel bones. Nikola Tesla, tall and gaunt, walked its shadow with quiet determination, though the weight of the world pressed more heavily than ever on his shoulders. The investors who had once believed in him had retreated, one by one, drawn away by other ventures, by doubt, or by the impatience that often shadows those who cannot see the future before it arrives. Inside the laboratory, coils lay unfinished, wires curled like sleeping serpents, and a hum of potential vibrated faintly, waiting for the day it could awaken. Tesla worked still, tirelessly, but his hands were slower, and his body grew frail beneath the relentless drive of his imagination. Nights were long, filled with the whisper of the ocean, the soft rattle of the wind to the tower's skeleton, and the quiet hum of electricity that existed only in his mind, perfect and complete. He scribbled calculations furiously, endlessly refining, perfecting, imagining circuits that could carry energy freely through the air, lighting homes, powering cities, and reaching even the most distant places on Earth. He was never deterred by the absence of money, the skepticism of men, or the limitations of flesh. Tesla's world existed beyond the ordinary, in a place where currents flowed invisibly and energy was infinite. But the reality outside his imagination was unyielding. The tower could not be completed without funding, and funding was slipping away. Yet Tesla did not despair openly. He walked the beach at dawn, the mist curling around his boots, listening to the waves as if they were whispering encouragement. "Patience," he murmured to himself. "Even the air must wait to be heard." He spoke softly, for his words were meant for the universe, not for men. He believed that one day, long after disbelief had faded, the world would awaken to the vision he had built in silence. The years stretched on, and with them came hardship. Tesla's financial resources dwindled, leaving him dependent on small investors and the occasional patron who recognized brilliance but lacked the courage to see it through. Wardenclyffe, once a monument to boundless imagination, began to show the signs of incompletion. Scaffolding left half-built, machinery resting in silence, metal rusting slowly beneath the rain. To the casual observer, it seemed a failure, a dream frozen mid-flight. But to Tesla, it remained alive in the quiet spaces of thought, pulsing invisibly, waiting. Even as the tower's promise faltered in the material world, it thrummed in his mind, perfect, flawless, eternal. He continued to refine his vision, drawing diagrams, writing notes, and imagining enhancements that no earthly hands could yet build. Each night, he walked among the skeletal framework, whispering plans into the wind, as though the tower itself could hear and respond. Friends and colleagues drifted away, unable to endure the intensity, unable to understand the singular devotion that defined Tesla. Investors pulled back, fearful of loss and ridicule. Newspapers that once marveled at the concept of free energy now hinted at folly, painting the dream as the obsession of man out of step with the practical world. Yet Tesla's resolve never faltered. He had seen the truth within the current of the air. He had touched the invisible and known it was real. To give up would be to betray a universe that had whispered to him since childhood. Isolation deepened. Tesla walked the streets of New York and Long Island alike, moving through shadows, unnoticed and alone, carrying within him a vision the world could not yet hold. Sometimes he paused, staring at the stars, and whispered softly, "It waits. It waits for the mind ready to receive it." The tower, looming over the sands, became both a sanctuary and a symbol, the embodiment of both ambition and the fragility of human understanding. As financial ruin approached, Tesla faced the cruelest truth of all. The world may not be ready for genius, no matter how luminous, no matter how pure. Wardenclyffe would never operate as he had imagined, the tower that could have transmitted free energy to every home, every village. Every distant city would remain silent, a monument to the intersection of brilliance and misfortune. Yet Tesla did not relinquish hope. In the quiet of the night, in the hum of invisible currents in his mind, the vision continued to live. Even in solitude, even in apparent defeat, Tesla remained a conduit to something far greater than the narrow judgments of men. He whispered to the currents, listened to the air, and imagined a day when the world might finally awaken to the truth he had seen for decades. And so, standing in the shadow of his incomplete tower, he felt neither defeat nor despair. He felt only the patient, enduring pulse of the universe, and a quiet certainty that genius, once born, can never be extinguished. And so Wardenclyffe waits in memory and in silence, a testament to the cost of vision, to the loneliness of genius, and to the unyielding persistence of man who spoke to lightning, who dreamed of free energy, and who never let the world's doubt extinguish the light burning within. Tesla, the boy who spoke to thunder, had built a monument that reached for the sky, a silent promise to the future, a whisper in the night, a light unseen but never forgotten. The streets of New York were alive with light and noise, but Nikola Tesla moved through them as if in a quiet dream. The city's clamor, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the distant whistle of trains, the murmur of men discussing business, was nothing to him. He was always elsewhere, listening to the subtle music of the universe, the invisible currents flowing through the air and soil, the hidden pulse that connected the stars above to the city below. By this time, Tesla had long since become a figure of solitude. He lived in small, modest rooms, places that could hardly contain the storms of his mind. He walked often at night, when the streets were empty and the air cool, imagining coils and wires turning silently in rhythm with the earth itself. He carried with him only notebooks, pens, and the faint echo of Wardenclyffe, the incomplete tower that remained a ghostly monument to his most ambitious dream. Even as the world called him eccentric, Tesla's mind remained a workshop of wonder. He spoke to pigeons in the park, feeding them crumbs as though they were confidants, listening to their soft coos with an attention that suggested he understood more than the average observer could imagine. Reporters and visitors often found him strange, odd, even a little alien. Yet in his solitude, there was a rhythm, a harmony, a connection to the universe that he alone could feel. He spent hours, often days, sketching impossible machines. He imagined devices that could communicate across continents without wires, harness the energy of the cosmos, even create mechanical wings that could lift humanity into the skies. To outsiders, it seemed fanciful, a man lost in visions. But Tesla did not labor for approval. He labored for the unseen, for the truth vibrating quietly in the air, waiting for him to translate it into reality. Evenings were spent in reflection. He would sit near the window of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker softly against the dark sky. In those moments, he whispered to himself or to the currents he believed flowed all around him, "The universe speaks, and one day, the world will hear." He often recalled the storms of his childhood in Serbia, the lightning that had danced across the hills, and the hum of energy that had seemed to whisper secrets to him long before any man had taught him physics. It was a memory, yes, but also a guide, a reminder that he had been chosen, in some way, to witness and channel these hidden forces. Despite his growing isolation, Tesla's work did not cease. Letters from admirers, young engineers, and occasionally dignitaries reminded him that the world still watched, even if only from a distance. Edison's shadow had faded from the horizon of his life, but the legacy of rivalry had left its mark, a reminder that genius rarely walks hand in hand with recognition or reward. Tesla's victories were private, internal, realized not in applause but in the quiet confirmation that he had glimpsed what others could not. He maintained a strict routine. Each day began with meticulous observation, experiments with small coils, light bulbs, mechanical devices, an occasional electrical demonstration for visitors he deemed worthy. He walked through the city at night, often retracing paths he had taken decades before, finding in the familiar streets the patterns of motion, energy, and sound that could inform his designs. His mind, relentless, never ceased turning, analyzing, imagining, and always, in the soft spaces between thought, he listened for the whisper of currents, for the pulse of the universe, for the song of energy that no man had yet learned to hear. And yet, loneliness weighed heavily. Tesla's mind, so rich with creation, had few companions who could truly understand it. Friends faded, Collaborators moved on, and the world continued to value practicality over vision. Even so, he persisted. He believed that knowledge, like light, could not be contained. It would find a way, whether through him or beyond him. He walked streets and rooftops, conversed with birds, sketched in notebooks, and all this, he found a rhythm, a solitude that was both heavy and sacred, filled with a hum of ideas and the unbroken pulse of unseen energy. The world around him moved forward, unaware of how close it had come to a revolution in energy, a transformation in daily life. Wardenclyffe's tower had been abandoned, its promise unrealized, but Tesla carried it within himself, fully intact, living in thought and imagination. He knew that the world might not yet accept his vision, but he did not despair. Genius, he understood, often walks unseen, unrecognized, its fruits harvested long after the seed has been planted. And so he moved through his days, quiet, solitary, endlessly observant. He whispered to the pigeons, to the currents in the air, to the lights that flickered across the city, "Patience, it will come." Each device, each sketch, each sleepless night was a testament to this patient belief. In solitude, Tesla did not weaken. He strengthened, becoming a conduit between the world that existed and the one he imagined, luminous, boundless, alive. Even as newspapers mocked him, as investors abandoned him, as the tower remained silent, Tesla's visions persisted. In the quiet, he heard them. The hum of future cities, the invisible dance of energy, the pulse of a world that could one day awaken to light and knowledge. His genius, though lonely, was undiminished, and in that soft, invisible current, he remained, a silent herald of a future the world was not yet ready to see. The city moved around Nikola Tesla, like a river flowing past a quiet island. Streetcars rattled, lamps glowed, vendors shouted. Life pulsed in every corner. But Tesla drifted through it all as if carried by an invisible current of his own design. To the world, he was eccentric, a man out of step with time, feeding pigeons in the park, muttering to himself in cafes, always scribbling in notebooks no one else could decipher. But to him, every detail of life was part of a larger rhythm. Every sound, shadow, and motion a note in the symphony of energy that surrounded the earth. His days had a quiet ritual. He rose early, often before dawn, and moved with deliberate calm. The city's first light had barely touched the windows of his apartment when Tesla was already immersed in experiments, testing small coils, observing the subtle flicker of bulbs, or noting the behavior of currents in metals and fluids. Each experiment was a conversation, a question posed to nature, a soft call and response with forces unseen. He measured, adjusted, and recorded meticulously, yet always with a sense of reverence, as if the universe itself were the true collaborator in his work. Pigeons became his companions. He fed them with tender care, noting their habits, their personalities, even whispering to injured birds as if they could understand the language of his mind. People passing by often laughed or shook their heads. But Tesla saw in these creatures a reflection of his own solitude. Independent, patient, connected to rhythms others could not perceive. In the cooing of the birds and the flutter of wings, he found quiet affirmation that life could be understood not just through machines, but through empathy and observation, the kind of insight that could never be measured by equations alone. Visitors, reporters, and occasional dignitaries were drawn to him, though often expecting a caricature. Tesla, always polite, received them with calm detachment, offering small demonstrations, explanations that flowed between science and poetry. He would show the flicker of a bulb, the hum of a coil, the faint light dancing invisibly in the air, and speak softly. The world is not yet ready, but it listens. Few understood, some left with skepticism, some with admiration, but all sensed a singular intensity, a mind attuned to the hidden fabric of reality, seeing the invisible threads of energy that bound the world together. In these later years, Tesla's eccentricities deepened. He slept little, sometimes only a few hours each night, walking the streets of Manhattan and Long Island alone, lost in thought. He would sit in his room, counting steps, feeding pigeons, or sketching inventions of fantastical scope. Machines that could fly, devices that could transmit messages instantaneously across continents, towers that could draw energy from the cosmos. These were not the whims of a madman, as some thought, but the extensions of the mind tirelessly listening to the universe. The world was often cruel to genius. Tesla faced mockery, misunderstanding, and neglect. Wardenclyffe had failed not for lack of brilliance, but for lack of comprehension, support, and timing. Yet Tesla carried no resentment. He carried vision. Each day was devoted to preparation, refinement, and dreaming. In the flickering lamplight of his apartment, he whispered equations and theories to himself, as if the ink could carry his ideas into the unseen currents surrounding the earth. Even in solitude, he maintained a quiet optimism. He believed that knowledge could not be destroyed, that energy, once understood, would eventually be harnessed. The inventions he conceived, the alternating current, wireless transmission, countless devices unbuilt, were seeds planted in the minds of humanity, waiting for the day they might grow. And Tesla, despite the years of isolation, still felt the pulse of those currents in his own hands, guiding him, reassuring him, whispering that the future belonged to those who could listen. In his final decades, he became a figure of legend, walking alone in the parks, feeding birds, entertaining journalists with subtle demonstrations of electricity that seemed magical. Children were drawn to him, sensing the quiet power behind his eyes, though few adults could understand it. The city watched as he moved through it like a ghost, quietly observing, endlessly imagining, and softly reminding the world of possibilities it had yet to comprehend. And yet, there was beauty in the solitude. Tesla's loneliness was not bitterness, but clarity. Free from distraction, he could devote himself entirely to the currents, the energy, the invisible threads that connected all things. Nights became laboratories of thought. Days were spent in observation, calculation, and quiet communion with the forces he alone could perceive. In every spark, every hum, every flicker, he found both inspiration and companionship, a subtle reminder that genius can thrive even when misunderstood. Even as his body weakened, Tesla's mind remained bright, luminous, tireless. He continued to speak softly to the currents, whispering to the air and the stars, "Patience, it will come." Though the world failed to recognize him fully, he knew, as he had always known, that the seeds of his work would bloom long after he was gone. And in this knowledge, he found peace, a calm certainty that the currents he had nurtured, both literal and metaphorical, would one day awaken the world to a brilliance beyond its comprehension. And so Tesla's later years passed, quiet, reflective, full of small miracles unnoticed by most. A pigeon would rest near his window. A light would glow briefly at his touch. A visitor might see a faint spark dance along a coil. To the world, it was eccentricity. To Tesla, it was life speaking back, softly, confirming that vision persists, that genius endures, and that even in the quietest hours, one can change the world without ever being seen. The world had changed, though few realized how much of that change bore Tesla's quiet imprint. Skyscrapers now reached higher into the sky. Cities glowed with electric light, and machines hummed with currents he had long understood. Yet the man who had glimpsed the invisible threads of energy walked alone through modest rooms in New York, feeding pigeons, speaking softly to the air, and dreaming of possibilities the world had yet to grasp. The brilliance he had poured into Wardenclyffe and countless other inventions remained, in many ways, invisible to those who had shaped the modern age. Tesla had always understood that recognition and reward were fleeting. He had known, from the moment Edison dismissed him, that the world often mistakes genius for eccentricity, brilliance for folly. Still, he labored without bitterness, devoted entirely to the currents he felt flowing through his hands, through the air, through the very earth beneath his feet. Each day was a quiet exploration, a conversation with forces unseen, a reminder that the universe had chosen him to listen and to translate what others could not. As he aged, the solitude deepened. Reporters came and went, curious to glimpse the man who had once illuminated the world with alternating current, or who had envisioned energy flowing invisibly through the air. Visitors noted his sharp mind, his soft, deliberate speech, and the faint, almost imperceptible light that seemed to cling to his presence. Children were drawn to him. They sensed something extraordinary, a warmth and quiet power that the adults often fail to perceive. And in their wonder, Tesla found solace, a small reflection of the awe he had once felt when he first studied lightning in the hills of Serbia. Money and fame had eluded him, yet his mind remained rich with ideas. He sketched machines that could fly, devices that could communicate across continents, and engines that could harness energy from the cosmos itself. Few of these inventions were ever built, and fewer were understood. But Tesla did not labor for accolades. He labored for truth, for the quiet certainty that knowledge, once glimpsed, could not be lost. In this work, he found purpose, a silent rhythm connecting him all creation. Even as his body grew frail, Tesla remained vigilant. He walked the quiet streets at night, counting his steps, observing the subtle hum of the city, and dreaming of currents that pulsed unseen through the air. He spoke softly, almost as if to himself, "The universe waits, it listens, it will understand." To him, the world was always a work in progress, an intricate system of forces that could be shaped, guided, and illuminated if only one had the patience to listen. Wardenclyffe had been abandoned, its vision unrealized, yet it lingered in memory, a testament to both ambition and the limitations imposed by human fear and misunderstanding. Tesla never renounced the dream. He carried it quietly, reverently, knowing that even in silence, the ideas could ripple forward in ways he could not yet see. And though the world largely overlooked him, he felt no bitterness, only the soft glow of understanding that genius often blooms unseen, and that the seeds of insight may flower long after the planter is gone. Tesla's final years were marked by simplicity, reflection, and small wonders. He observed birds with careful attention, watched the play of light and shadow across the city, and imagined how energy might one day flow freely, invisibly, to every home and heart. He lived modestly, yet his mind soared higher than any skyscraper, stretching across continents, envisioning a world bound not by wires, but by the invisible pulses of knowledge, light, and possibility. When he passed, quietly, alone in his room, the world barely noticed. Newspapers reported a brief obituary. A few engineers and admirers mourned, remembering him as an eccentric visionary. Yet Tesla's legacy had already taken root. Alternating current-powered cities, machines hummed with the energy he had mastered, and the dream of wireless transmission, though not fully realized in his lifetime, would inspire generations to come. His immortality was not in monuments, money, or fame, but in the quiet, persistent energy that flowed unseen to the world, a legacy of light, of vision, of a mind that never ceased listening to the pulse of the universe. He had spoken to lightning, whispered to currents, and imagined a world beyond the practical reach of men. And in that imagination, he had changed the world forever. Even now, when the night is still and the air hums faintly with invisible currents, one can almost feel Tesla's presence, a whisper of genius, a flicker of light, a reminder that vision endures beyond recognition, and that true brilliance, once glimpsed, is never truly gone. And so, the story of Nikola Tesla concludes, not with applause, nor with the closure of worldly success, but with the gentle, enduring resonance of mind attuned to the universe, a mind that continues to inspire, to illuminate, and to whisper to all who dare to dream beyond the visible, to listen beyond the heard, and to believe in the infinite possibilities of the night.